The top business stories live from the Sky News City studio. Rishi Sunak hails nearly £30 billion worth of investment in the UK as business leaders and investors meet at Hampton Court Palace. I'll be joined by the Investment Minister Lord Johnson and by the Chief Executive of one of the UK's leading tech companies. Plus, shares of Rightmove jump by 6% as the property portal raises its forecast for annual average revenue per advertiser. Good morning, this is Business Live with me, Ian King. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, this morning hailed some £29.6 billion worth of investment in the UK as global chief executives and investors descended on the government's second Global Investment Summit at Hampton Court Palace. More than 200 business leaders are attending the event, including Steve Schwarzman, the chairman and chief executive of the private equity giant Blackstone, David Solomon, the chief executive of Goldman Sachs, and Jamie Dimon, the chief executive of JP Morgan Chase. Well, joining me now for the latest is CNBC's anchor Jemana Basechi, who's at the summit in Hampton Court. Jemana, good to see you this morning. Set the scene for us. What's happening there?
Yeah, good morning, Ian. Well, it's wonderful to be here. As you mentioned, it is the second of this type of summit. The first happened in 2021. This year, we are expecting more than 200 CEOs to attend from all around the world. And of course, the stated aim is to bring in foreign direct investment and capital into the UK. Now, the title of the agenda is Great British Ideas, Past, Present and Future. So it is a celebration of sorts of British innovation, going as far as quantum computing and the steam engine, but of course showcasing the best of what British industries have to offer today in terms of manufacturing capabilities, technology, and of course the climate transition as well. Now, you did mention earlier on that yesterday evening Downing Street put out a statement saying that up to £30 billion of financial commitments have already been made. A significant achievement, Ian, if you think of how much was secured at the last investment summit. That is pretty much triple the amount that they secured back in 2021. So definitely a step in the right direction. And of course, an endorsement of sorts of what the UK government is setting out to do. Now, it is worth mentioning that in terms of FDI flows, there has been a moderation of flows over the last couple of years. Ernst & Young put out a report back in June suggesting that the UK is actually second behind France in terms of ability to attract foreign direct investment. But what the UK government will say is that it is not just the sum of investments, but the type of investments. They're aiming for quality investments, greenfield investments, investments in technology. And on those fronts, the UK does actually stand out. So definitely a step in the right direction.
Jemana, you've been interviewing participants all morning there. What sort of things are you picking up from them?
Yes, well, I think to come back to what we were saying about that number, that 30 billion number, what is important to note here is that there's a halo effect. So the more that international investors see other investors putting money into the UK, the more that they want to participate as well. And so that part of the consideration is very important too. We spoke to Lord Dominic Johnson, who I know you're going to be speaking to as well, and he was saying that this isn't just a schmooze fest, that is his word, but actually an opportunity for real money to come in and for the commercialization of these projects to actually take off. In terms of other business leaders that we spoke to the chairman of Vardis Holdings, who is best known, I guess, for being one of the founders of Northvolt, the battery manufacturer. They're doing something very interesting because they're putting a lot of money investments as well. They're part of that 30 billion pot to help UK consumers transition away from gas heaters to electric heaters. Again, it's also part of the climate transition plan and part and parcel of what the UK government is trying to do to achieve their climate objectives and helping companies like Vardis and Northvolt to get there. We also spoke to the CEO of Coinbase, an interesting one as well. So that is obviously a crypto platform with everything that's going on there. It was surprising to see a crypto platform being represented. And they said actually in terms of regulation, the UK government are doing the right thing because they're taking it very seriously. And the more there is regulation that helps these types of industries grow, but do it in a way that is actually consistent with the law, is good for businesses as a whole. So there have been a lot of discussions taking place here. One final thing I would point out is as we speak, the CEO of Blackstone, Stephen Schwarzman, is engaging in a one-on-one conversation with the UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, about the state of the global economy and investment opportunities. These types of discussions are going to be happening all day here, Ian.
All right, great to see you this morning, Jemana. Thanks for that. So Some other stories for you now. And shares of Rightmove have risen by almost 6% this morning after the property portal raised its forecast for annual average revenue per advertiser. Rightmove said this was now expected to come in at between £112 and £116 for the year, up from its previous forecast of between £103 and £105. It said most of the growth had been driven by new home developers, but added that estate agents had also continued to use the service. Drugs giant GSK said today that its blood cancer treatment Blenrep had met its primary goal of progression-free survival during a late-stage trial when used as a second-line treatment in patients with myeloma. The company said that the treatment had significantly extended the time to disease progression or death compared with an existing standard of care. Multiple myeloma is the third most common blood cancer globally and is generally considered treatable but not curable. There are approximately 176,000 new cases of multiple myeloma diagnosed globally each year. And the venture capital investor Molten Ventures is buying its smaller rival Forward Partners for £41.1 million. Molten, which has backed companies including Kazoo, Allplants, Crowdcube and Freetrade, said Forward Partners had a well-balanced portfolio aligned to its own and focused on current market trends such as applied AI, alternative assets and digital marketplaces. Forward Partners was valued at around £135 million when it listed on AIM in July 2021, but the value of its portfolio has been hit by headwinds that have hit the venture market, including the need for portfolio companies to make their cash last longer rather than invest it in growth. Well, Wall Street's gains in a shortened session on Friday evening were followed by declines for stocks in the Asia-Pacific region overnight. The Nikkei in Tokyo fell by 0.5%, but it's still up by more than 8% so far this month. Well, in Europe, stocks have been trading largely to the downside this morning. Only the IBEX in Madrid in positive territory right now. Talking points this morning include Valneva. The French drug maker is ahead by 3.5% in Paris after the EU regulator accepted its application for an accelerated review of a vaccine candidate it's working on. Well, here in London, the FTSE 100 also in negative territory, off 0.5%. The energy and healthcare heavyweights are weighing on the index this morning. In terms of the percentages, the biggest faller is Entain, the gaming group. That's on broker comment, following last week's settlement of bribery charges with the UK's Crown Prosecution Service. To the upside, well, Rightmove is the leading blue chip gainer right now, up just shy of 6%. Outside the FTSE, Johnson Matthey has benefited from a push from one of the brokers this morning. That's at least 3% ahead there. While the West End property company Shaftesbury Capital is also ahead by nearly 3% following a trading update. On the foreign exchange market, so it's pretty quiet this morning, if we're honest. Sterling little moved against either the dollar or the euro. Likewise, a single currency not doing much against the dollar. As for the oil price, well, last week it notched up its first weekly gain in 5, but this morning Brent crude is off by nearly 1.5% a barrel. That's currently $79.38 a barrel. Well, joining me this morning is Russ Mould, Investment Director at AJ Bell. Russ, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Ian.
Not a massive news day so far, but Rightmove is interesting.
Yeah, one of the quieter Mondays, I think. But no, Rightmove, as you said, shares up 5%, top of the FTSE 100 leaderboard, higher than expected average revenue per advertiser. And I think this comes back to the story that some people would see that Rightmove is a winner whether the property market's strong or weak. If it's strong, lots of properties to advertise, roll up, please come and buy one. And if things are weak, then you've got house builders and estate agents having to work all the harder to get those customers coming through the door. So today's statement does at least give some credence to that. Shares have been very weak all year. I guess rising interest rates have probably been the big fear there as much as anything else, but a big rally since the market's begun to think maybe the Bank of England will cut rates next year quicker than we think.
Maybe. I mean, I guess another reason for the weakness in Rightmove is you've got this bid coming in for on the market from the number one player in the US. I mean, that's potentially a big threat.
Yeah, and if you've got a successful business model, somebody's going to try and copy it, imitate it, get their share of the pies. That's only logical, but it does have a very, very strong position. And a stronger market next year, maybe all boats would rise with the tide.
Yeah, now one that caught your eye lower down the corporate food chain today, Frontier Developments gaming company.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I mean, video games aren't my field of expertise. The last video game I played was Nintendo 64's GoldenEye in the 1990s. It's not my field. The shares are down 95% now from their lockdown highs. So video games obviously kept a lot of people busy and happy during when we're all stuck at home, but since then, games have been late, games haven't sold well. The company actually said that customers were being more price sensitive last Christmas, And the current problem seems to be related to a new release, Warhammer Realms of Ruin. That's not sold quite as well as hoped, so they're not going to make the revenue forecast for the year. It's going to stay in loss, and so the shares were down by a fifth, one of the worst performers on the junior AIM market this morning.
Interesting. Now, from China, we've had some interesting data this morning, again, weighing on the index a bit.
Yeah, industrial profits up 3% year on year. That's after double-digit advances in August, September, so October was a little bit slower. Could be down to input costs, could be down to exports, could be down to sanctions. But it doesn't read well for the world's second biggest economy, and so you've seen, quick trigger traders and algorithm software-driven funds think, oh, China weakness, I'd better knock the oils and I'd better knock the miners because China's a big consumer of raw materials. So they've shot first and asked questions later.
Now, we don't always talk about the gold price, but it's hit a 6-month high today.
Yeah, it's having another go at getting over $2,000 an ounce, and it's tried a few times and not been able to hold it. Why? Well, I guess one reason is, again, thinking that the Fed may be cutting rates earlier than expected next year. Gold, there's no yield. There's an opportunity cost to owning it, insuring it, burying it in the ground, whatever you want to do with it. But if that interest rate comes down, then there's less opportunity cost in owning it. There's still debate over what's going to happen with the US budget deficit on Capitol Hill. And if America keeps chucking out debt, then people might want to own something where there's a store of value, and gold has historically served that function. And also it may be just that people are getting, although the stock market's getting very excited about a soft landing or no landing in 2024, the bond market's telling you a different message, and so is the gold market, because that seems to be preparing for tougher times ahead. So 3 big markets, 3 different messages. 2 of them are going to be wrong, I would think, on balance.
Absolutely. Russ, always good to see you. Thanks for joining me today. Well, among the key areas in which the Prime Minister is hoping to spur investment at the UK's second Global Investment Summit are tech, infrastructure, clean energy and life sciences, all sectors seen as crucial for promoting growth and boosting productivity in coming decades. Well, joining me now from Hampton Court Palace is Dr Ilana Wisby, Chief Executive at Oxford Quantum Circuits. Ilana, good to see you again this morning. Just for viewers who aren't up to speed with what you do, tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, sure thing. So thank you so much for taking the time to have me. My name is Dr. Ilana Wisby. I'm a deep tech entrepreneur and the CEO of OQC, Oxford Quantum Circuits. Now, we are focused on building a brighter future for all that is enabled by quantum. What that really means is that we build physically quantum computers and we put them into the hands of our customers through delivering the first enterprise-ready quantum computers. That means we put the systems into data centres and enable our customers to access and run really challenging problems that are fundamentally intractable today using the power of quantum.
Now, you've raised, I think you've announced today, you've raised £85 million to invest in R&D projects. What sort of people have been putting up the money?
So we're part of an ongoing Series B. It's a $100 million, £85 million funding raise, which we've now closed that first part of, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, that investment into the UK and into OQC specifically will enable us to focus on building more powerful quantum computers. That's not simply building bigger systems with more qubits, it's really investing in the overall performance of systems themselves. Of course, that will enable us to also scale our team, both here in the UK, but also internationally. We're delighted to have SBI Investment leading our funding round, a very entrepreneurial, visionary individual, Kitaro-san, backing the company. And that means that we'll also be expanding, building and taking OQC out into the world further, particularly with a focus on Japan, and of course supported also across AUKUS as well from a defence and security angle.
No mean feat to be raising money in this sort of climate.
Thank you. It has been, we've been privileged ultimately to have had such success with this. We've made tremendous commercial traction, both on the technology, but also, really having customers running quantum computing algorithms enabled by that enterprise-ready quantum has been really, really a fantastic story to tell. Fundamentally, we're the first people in the world to have put quantum computers into commercial data centres, and from a security aspect in terms of accessibility for our customers, as well as for them really being able to interact with it seamlessly, that is a world's first. So I think that's also been, of course, part of the attraction and appeal for our Series B.
Now, in his autumn statement last week, the Chancellor talked a lot about the need to improve grid connectivity for big power users. Is that an issue for you? I'm guessing the fact that you're in data centres makes it slightly less pressing, or tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, part of the benefit for us as a company of being in the data center ecosystem means that we do have all of that support of the national existing infrastructure. Our previous generation system, which was called Lucy, that was an 8-qubit processor, that was based in our R&D labs, and ultimately it wasn't right enterprise ready. There were times in which the national grid would go down and your local place would go down and you'd be sat there trying to make sure that you've got the system back online the next day. Whereas what we need to be able to do is build quantum computers that are 24/7, reliable, have the uptimes, have the SLA requirements met, even though it is still something that's in R&D. And data centers do provide that. If you go into a data center, it's absolutely phenomenal to see the entire rooms of battery technologies and so on and so forth that really underpin that specific, the data centers themselves. So that was one of our commercial drivers as well for being in the data centers themselves.
And briefly, Ilana, if you would please, if there's one thing that you hope to achieve from attending the summit today, what would it be?
Yes. We want to announce the launch of OQC Toshiko to the world. We want to partner with these other incredible world-leading companies and, of course, support the UK on that mission of attracting inward investment to the UK. We're delighted and honoured to be one of the showcase companies here to support that.
Excellent. Well, we're delighted to have you on the programme today. Ilana, good to see you again this morning. Thank you. Still to come here on Business Live, we will have more from the Global Investment Summit. I'll be joined by the Investment Minister, Lord Johnson. Don't go away.
Christmas has so many iconic and recognizable melodies, and so it's much easier, than creating something original, right? If someone already recognizes the piece, whereas in classical music, people often gravitate towards Moonlight Sonata and Clair de Lune, but there's so much classical repertoire. But, in Christmas music, you have a more limited supply of themes. I'm so inspired by old Hollywood and, cinema music. And so I wanted to create a sound where, if you listen to the radio and you hear my music, you'll be like, oh, that sounds like Chloe Flower. So it definitely has my own spin and my own personality. Christmas is my favorite holiday, and so it really made sense for me authentically to create an album around Christmas. For me, it's my favorite holiday because everyone's just a little bit kinder, a little bit nicer, and I wanted to create that into a sound. So basically, I want my Christmas album to feel and sound like a warm hug.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. Well, we were going to return to the Global Investment Summit at Hampton Court Palace, where we're hoping to speak to the Investment Minister, Lord Johnson, but he's had a bit of a job getting to the camera point, apparently. So in the meantime, let me remind you what's been going on in the markets overnight. And Wall Street's gains in a shortened session on Friday were followed by declines for stocks in the Asia-Pacific region overnight. As you can see there, the Nikkei off by 0.5% there. It's still up by some 8.4%, I think it is, so far this month. I should also say, by the way, the big US stock indices, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq, all on course for their best month so far this year. Well, in Europe, stocks have been trading to the downside this morning, apart from the IBEX in Madrid. You can see there all of the main continental European indices in negative territory, though they too have had a pretty good month on the whole, it's worth pointing out. Valneva, the French drug maker, one of the standouts, that's up 3.5% right now in Paris. That was after the EU regulator accepted an application for an accelerated review of a vaccine candidate on which it's been working. Valneva, of course, a name familiar to many of us following the work that it did during the COVID pandemic. I'll just show you the FTSE 100 there. That is also in negative territory right now, off just over 0.25%. Some of the energy and healthcare heavyweights are weighing on the index. Well, I think we can now go to Lord Johnson at the Global Investment Summit in Hampton Court Palace. Lord Johnson, good to see you this morning. Let me start with I was reading a column in the Telegraph this morning by Lucy Burton, and the headline said, "This country knows how to throw a party, but investors won't be fooled." I mean, they're implying it's a bit of a boondoggle.
Well, absolutely not. This is probably the most successful global investment summit ever run by any country anywhere in the world ever in history. We've announced just under £30 billion of investment. That's announced commitments of companies like Microsoft, BioNTech, Australian pension funds and many more. So, you know, money genuinely talks in this instance, and the business investors who are coming here are saying we're committing to the UK for the long term.
Obviously, it's encouraging that those investments were pre-announced, but I watched the Prime Minister's speech in the hope of getting some more news. There was no new news in it, essentially. It was a bit of a sales pitch.
Well, yeah, absolutely right. This is a sales exercise. You know, if you ain't yelling, you ain't selling. And the GIS is all about projecting Britain's investability to the rest of the world. So, completely right. I thought the Prime Minister did a great job. And we just had Steve Schwarzman and the Prime Minister do a sort of round table. I don't know if you saw that too. But Steve Schwarzman, proprietor of Blackstone, one of the biggest investors in the world, 70 billion invested in the UK, was just saying why he wants to invest here, why he thinks it's such an attractive country to invest in, and what he's looking forward to. And some of those aspects are, you know, the rule of law and the system of government that are clearly very attractive, but also the government's policy framework. You know, what are we doing to support advanced manufacturing, science and technology, AI? And so the feedback we're getting there is very positive. So yes, the Prime Minister's right to extol the virtues of the UK, and the announcements made today are really significant, 3 times up on what we did in GIS 2021. If you include what was announced on Friday with Nissan deciding to build 2 of their models in Sunderland and invest more in battery factories, and what happened on Wednesday with the Korean state visit. Did you report that? 21 billion of investment announced by Korean institutions, from pension funds through to patisseries. You know, this is the $50 billion week. That says a hell of a lot about this country and the investability of it and what the government's doing. And frankly, I'm bullish on Britain, and I'm trying to get everyone else as motivated as I am.
Well, we did indeed report on the Korean state visit and on some of those.
Well, thank you. That's good.
What is success going to look like at this for this summit?
Sure. I mean, what's really important is this all about jobs and growing the economy in the UK. This isn't some high-level schmooze fest. I'm very, very focused on making sure that we do 3 things. 1, showcase the UK, which is the top investment destination in Europe and one of the top investment destinations in the world. 2, make some great announcements, which creates a halo effect, which sets a great example. I mean, and also is, frankly, investing money in the UK and creating jobs and wealth and security for the economy. And 3, which is very important, is this is a huge opportunity for top business investors to talk to government ministers about how we can make the environment more investable. You know, we live in a competitive world. You know, these deals that we're winning, whether it's Nissan or Microsoft or BioNTech or Tata, they have a global opportunity base to select from. So we have to get them to come here by giving them regulatory certainty, attractive taxation, and the fundamental opportunity to create a return. So really powerful to have a forum where these individuals can feed in what we need to do more.
Very briefly, I mean, another thing investors crave is stability. How can we say we have that when, since the referendum, we've had 5 prime ministers, 6 chancellors and 6 business secretaries?
Well, I mean, I think Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have done an incredible job, actually, of stabilising, the overall sense of projection and direction for the UK government. That's very, very important. I mean, I think businesses are also investing in the UK. They're investing in the people. They're investing in the longer-term structures that give us the certainty and stability that makes this country so attractive. But actually, I think the Conservatives, led by Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, have done a phenomenal job in tackling some of the key economic issues that investors care about. One of those is inflation. The other is giving a sense of regulatory certainty and support for areas such as advanced manufacturing, science and technology.
Sorry.
And we have nailed all of those, by the way.
OK. Good to see you.
Very much.
Thanks for joining me. That's it. I'm back at 4:30. Hope to see you then. Cheerio.